In this episode, I interviewed David Courtney of BookFunnel. We cover 3 topics. First, we talk about how authors early in their career can build an audience and use a tool like BookFunnel to do that. Then we go into some general strategies and tactics that any author can apply to help build their audience and give their customers a better experience. And finally, we talk about direct selling, a topic near and dear to my heart. So I really hope you enjoy this interview. I had a great time talking with Damon. I think he's a super smart cat, and he really knows what's going on in the author community, and he's building some fantastic tools that are going to help us all take this business to a whole nother place in the near future. All right, today we're here with Damon Courtney from BookFunnel. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Joe?
Really good, really good. So we met face-to-face at the Sell More Books Summit in Chicago.
Yeah.
And hit it off. And you kind of opened my mind to stuff that I was thinking about around the complications around doing some direct selling. I was doing some research on that. I was already a BookFunnel customer at the time. I was using it just to shove my books out to my reader list. But, you kind of blew my mind when you laid out some of the stuff that was already in place and that you were coming out with. So I thought it'd be great to have you on, and we talk about kind of beginning, mid-level, and then this whole direct sales concept. But before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about what BookFunnel is for those that may not know what cool stuff you do when you're not beating your kids.
Well, I don't have a lot of time between beating them, but so BookFunnel is, the simplest way to explain it is we do ebook delivery, which most authors don't really, or they're not doing so much of because they're doing it through bookstores. But we do ebook delivery outside of the traditional store system. So, and the beauty about that is that where Amazon will only ship books to Amazon devices and Barnes & Noble is only going to ship them to their devices, and the same for Kobo, we ship them to all the devices. So if you're using a platform like BookFunnel, we get your books to every device, every app, everything in existence, really. And so all of that started really because there wasn't a way for me as an author myself. I'm a self-published fantasy author, and there wasn't a way for me to deliver my reader magnet, which for those who may be new and don't know, is basically just a freebie that you're giving away to entice people to sign up for your mailing list. So I was setting up my mailing list for the first time years ago, and I was like, hey, I'll give people this free, the first book in my series for free. And there wasn't a way to deliver it. There wasn't a way that you could do that. So being the engineer that I am and annoying to my wife, I said, I'm going to go build that thing because nobody else has it. So yeah, that's what BookFunnel does. And then all of the features on top that we're going to talk about later, they all stemmed from that basic initial idea, which is we are here to make sure the ebooks get to the readers' devices and their apps in whatever way that they want to read them. And that includes our support staff, which is trained to do all of those devices and all of those apps and help all of those little old ladies. Oh, the little old ladies. There are so many of them that have trouble. And that's what we do.
Cool. So why don't we talk a little bit about that beginning author? So like you were when you got started. When was that, by the way?
I published my first book in 2011.
2011, okay.
And it wasn't probably until the second book came out in 2012 that I started thinking, hey, I should market and learn how to do stuff with my book. It really was sort of I was probably like a lot of first-time authors who were just like, I wrote a book and I put it up on Amazon. And why isn't anyone buying it?
Nobody can find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now there's so many more options for authors, and you can go on Facebook and see all kinds of groups of people talking about what's the best way to build a list and find your readers. One thing that I found interesting in my discussions with you is that you're in an interesting spot because you kind of see behind the curtain with authors and you see what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to hear from you kind of your thoughts for an early author, what is working, what isn't working, and how to use your tools to kind of get that, not make all the mistakes that you made when you were getting started.
Yeah. So I would say, we get these questions all the time. So we get emails to our support staff that are basically asking, what do I need to do? How do I get started? And believe it or not, sometimes that is an author who hasn't even published their first book. And sometimes that's an author who has 20 books published and has still never set up a mailing list, never done all of the other things that a lot of people would say are pretty standard for the industry, things that you should be doing. Setting up a mailing list, you really should have that. And a lot of authors don't start off with that. And that's okay, because you can pick that up anywhere in your journey and start building that mailing list. But you should definitely start, when you have once you start getting that first book out there. People who read and love your book are going to want to know where to find you, particularly if it's a series and they're wanting to know when the second book is going to come out. So the biggest things that I would tell authors, and the questions that we see from a lot of authors, are things like, what do I do as I'm trying to build my mail? Okay, so I heard in some group that I'm supposed to be building a mailing list. So what is it that I'm supposed to do? And what you really want to start with is set up the mailing list and start attracting readers through just organically through the back of your book, right? So you've got your first book published out there, and people read it, they get to the end of the story, and they want to know more. They want to know when the next book is coming out. So that is the exact moment when you use what they call in the biz a call to action. And they click that call to action is basically, hey, I hope you enjoyed the book. Now click through here, join my mailing list, and I'll give you a free novella or a free short story or something else that is, especially if you're in a series, something that ties into the thing that they just read. I will say that most of what we hear from readers, if you're just wanting a few tips, don't do samples or excerpts. Readers, we hear from them all the time that they feel cheated. They feel like you're doing a bait and switch, like you only gave them 3 chapters of a book. So if we tell authors all the time, if this is your first book, go write a reader magnet, a short story, a novella, something small that won't take you a whole lot of time to write, something else that you can give away that is a complete story, something that when the reader gets it, they get to the end and it has a satisfying beginning, middle, and end. And that can be a short story, that can be a novella, it can be another standalone novel, whatever you feel comfortable doing. But I'll tell you that excerpts and samples, unless you make it really, really clear on the download page that what they're getting is only the first 3 chapters or is only a sample, they're going to be really mad when they get to the end and realize that you didn't give them the full story.
Mm. And what do you what's your feel for word count?
For a reader magnet, I've seen reader magnets that are 2,000 and 3,000 word short stories, okay. Especially if they tie into the novel that you're selling. So, I've seen some data that says that, most readers, or that half of readers don't care about it, whether it's a series or a standalone. And that may be true. We've seen authors that have a standalone novel, but then they give away a short story that tells some little side story or some little backstory that is attached to that standalone novel. And the same thing in a series. If you're writing in a series, it's really easy to go back and write a little prequel that came before the series started. Because once I'm into your series and I'm in love with your characters, give me more. Tell me more about them. Tell me how they met. Tell me about that first time they had that great adventure. And it doesn't have to be long. I've seen short stories myself that were, again, 2,000-3,000 words, and they work great. The longer it is, I'll tell you, the happier that readers are. I mean, everybody, you go to the store and they're giving away 1 thing for free, and over here they're giving away 10 things for free, then somebody's going to want the 10 things more than the 1 thing. But that said, as long as it's a complete story, readers are pretty happy.
Yeah, and I know to that point, not so much on the lead-in piece, but when I did my work, so I have a fiction pen name, I write steampunk. To try out the direct sales piece, what I did is I did kind of like an origin story. The character that was in the series, I went and started kind of another series that the whole purpose was really to test out direct selling, right?
Right.
And when I set that up, I was amazed how many people wanted to know that stuff, right?
Right.
You almost set the trap, right? Because it's like all those things you were alluding to, they're kind of floating around in your head. It was just putting them down on paper.
Yeah, and readers, especially series readers, they most series readers, myself included, are completists. So if there is other material out there, they want to know about it. Look at the short stories that, like, novellas and things that George R. R. Martin has been putting out there with the Song of Ice and Fire, which, if you don't know, is the Game of Thrones whole thing. And he's taking forever to write the novels, but he's put out a few novellas in between, and they immediately shoot up the bestseller charts, even though they occurred like 1,000 years before the series that he's currently writing. People just want to know more about the world that you're building and the stories that you're telling.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's that, they don't want that info dump unless it's like built into the story, right? Like it's the stuff that you used to just want to like tell people. It's like, no, don't just tell them, save it, because that could be your novella.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So, we talked a little bit about that attraction, so we can, get people in to you as an author. They get introduced to what you're writing. One thing I talk about with folks in the new book is retention. So just because that person went to the effort of giving you an email and downloading that book doesn't necessarily mean they've read that book.
Right.
Right. Like, and I know for myself, when I was getting going with this, I was just so enthused with getting names on the list. I never thought to stop and say, hey, what needs to be done to get this person to actually move that book up to the top of the virtual pile and start to read it? Because if you really believe your books are going to sell, then they have to read it for the book to sell, right?
Right.
They may love pizza puffs, but if they never taste test the pizza puff, they're not going to buy the big Costco box of pizza puffs.
Right. Which is why Costco puts out those samples all the time, right?
Yeah.
So and I think the best thing you can do is just follow up, right? And you can do this in an autoresponder. So for those, again, an autoresponder is basically when somebody joins your list, you put them onto a little tiny sequence of emails, and the first one can be just a couple days later and says, "Hey, did you get your copy? Did you get your book? Just wanted to make sure, follow up and make sure that you got your copy. I'm excited for you to read it. It's the first book in my series. It has dragons and elves." Sorry, I'm a fantasy writer, so this is all, that's where I go. But it has dragons and wizards and all the things that I love, right? And just keep it short. Readers don't appreciate long emails, but just give them a little short. And oftentimes you'll get a response back. Because we see readers often think we are the author. So when we send a book and we say, "Hey, here's your copy," they'll reply, it's like, "Oh, thanks, Joe. I can't wait to read it." So we see responses from readers all the time. And it's sometimes just that little bit of, "Hey, just wanted to follow up and make sure you got your copy." And people will respond and say, "Oh, yeah, I did get it. I can't wait to read it. I've moved it to the top of my pile," just like you said. "Oh, I did get it. I got it a few days ago, but now now that you said dragons, I'm going to put it at the top of my pile." And then maybe another follow-up just a few days later that says, "Hey, how's the book? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Just tell me about it. I'd love to hear from you." There are a lot of readers out there that just love to feel important. They want to feel like you care. And often, even though it's an autoresponder, and most of us know that, right? But it still feels kind of like, hey, this person actually listens. Now, here's the trick. If they respond back to them.
Yeah.
And that's I will say that I see that a lot of authors don't want to deal with that, right? They don't actually want to communicate with their readers. They just want you to get on my list, and then I'll tell you when I've got a new book and go buy it. And that can work for some. It's not going to work for a lot. You're going to have to do a little bit of communication with your readers. Maybe not individual responses all the time, but certainly when you're getting started out as a new author, it's fun. I've had a few people email me and tell me they love my books. Not as many as I would like because I haven't worked very hard to sell them. But when they do, it feels really, really good that not only did they like it, they took the time to reach out and write an email of a couple of paragraphs to say that they really liked the series. And that's a really good feeling. I always respond to those people because, why wouldn't I?
Yeah. So when I tested this out, I went and, originally I had just kind of like an indoctrination sequence. Like I did the first step. Hey, did you get your book? Hope you like it. Talked about myself, talk about, the other books in the series. And then I was on to like trying to sell them more stuff. And I changed that. And I went to actually where my characters talk to the person. So in that initial
Oh,
series,
yeah.
where
I've seen that. It's really cool.
Right, where it's like there's a detective and it's set in the Victorian time, so he is the first one, and then there's some paranormal stuff. There's this woman, and like I go through that series, and it's still kind of the same information, but I get people that have written like my response rate on that is high single digits. Which for email,
that's pretty good.
It's pretty good, right? My open rates are, the lowest is like in the fourth in the sequence is like 47%.
That's amazing.
Right? And people write me back like in character, right? Like because some people that are into that, like they're probably wearing their top hat and their goggles while they're reading the book, right?
Steampunk has a very rabid fan base.
Right? So they write back and they are engaged, and it's just what you said. They're like, oh, I've never seen an email like this. I'm going to go pull that book up and take a look at it.
Right.
Right. And that's my point is like, you can't assume just because you put all your blood, sweat, and tears in it, that it isn't just in the digital ether dying.
Right.
Right. Like you have to get it, because if they get the pizza puff in their mouth, they probably are then going to go buy the box.
Right.
But if there's too many people, I mean, you go to Costco, there's too many people standing in front, or like the pizza puffs aren't ready, you just go.
You move on, you don't buy them. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the guy with nachos down the way.
There's always somebody else selling nachos.
Yeah. So what other things have you seen your tool used for like nurturing and developing that fan base?
So I would say that talking to a lot of authors, and the biggest thing that I see is the authors who are like me in that I really love my fans, but I'm not great at communicating with them. Right? I'm not good at keeping up with regular emails. I don't actually have a lot to say, and some of the things that a lot of authors have to get over is, well, I don't want to bother you. I don't want to. I should probably email my list. I don't want to bother anyone, and that's just how that's the person that I am, right? And I've met a lot of authors who have the same problem, and what I recommend to them is write them a short story. So you've got this list, you've built this list of readers who love your world, who love what you're doing. I love what you're doing with character, basically talking in character, or even doing character profiles, giving them more information. Mm-hmm. But we've seen a lot of authors who pretty regularly, about once a month, they send out a free short story that takes place in their world. And when we see the response rate from readers is great, it's really, really high on stuff like that. And thinking about it, I would see the authors doing that, and thinking about it as an author, it's like to sit down and craft an email to my list for me takes me all day, because I am so careful with my words, and I want to be funny but not too funny, and I want to be witty but not offensive, and it's so hard to be Damon J. Courtney to my mailing list. But I can sit down in the world that I created, the fantasy world that I created, and rattle off a 2,000-word short story in an hour, because I know my characters back and front. I can pluck one of the characters from my series and decide, you know what, he had a cool adventure one time where he, stole an alligator. I'm going to go write that story, right? And 3,000 words later, boom, I've got a short story. I do an edit, make sure that there's no egregious typos, and I say, hey, everybody, here's a little short story that I wrote about such and such. He appeared in book 3 if you haven't read it, but you don't need to have read the book to understand the short story. And the beauty about that is you can have regular communication with your readers and not have to have that sort of sweat of, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what to say to everybody. No reader ever got mad because you sent them more story to read, right? They're readers first. They love stories. They're on your list because they love the story that you were telling. So if you don't have anything else to say, give them a story. Any author who is sufficiently invested in their world, be it whatever fantasy world, a romance world, it doesn't matter, horror. Anybody who is invested in their world in that way can rattle off a short story in their own world in probably no time at all. And then all the readers on your list will be perfectly happy to take a nice free short story. And then what's great is you've given it to your list. Yeah, throw it up on Amazon later. Put it up for 99 cents, sell it later, sell it direct, do whatever you want to do with it. But your list gets it first. And being a part of my list means you get it for free. So welcome to my list. Stick around. We've got cool stuff.
Nice. One of the things I remember you mentioning when we were talking before was the idea of having like bonus chapters and using that not just as a way to get people to get on your list, but as a methodology with some of the integrations that you have to really track the reader's journey through the books, right? Because
Sure.
one of the it's been great that Amazon has done all this fantastic stuff to democratize, disintermediate the relationships so that more people can sell books to more readers. But as we talked before we got online, is they're not going to share any information.
Nope.
That's staying in the vault, staying in the volcano. But there's some ways that you've seen that folks can kind of track that path, even though those books may be in KU.
Sure. Well, so one of the things that we do is, or that we tell authors to do, when you upload a book to BookFunnel, you create the book one time, but then you can create as many pages for that book as you want. And a page is basically it's a landing page. And be it, in most cases, it would be a page where you're collecting the reader's email address and then, saying, okay, great, thanks. Here's your free book. And we have what's called a restricted giveaway page, which is basically you have to be on my mailing list or the page won't let you download the book. So this is only for my fans. You need to join my list, but if you're already on my list, boom, you get this short story for free. And then the BookFunnel will stop them from getting that book if they're not already on your list. So for those people, and sadly there are people who will subscribe, get your free book, and unsubscribe. And then that's it. But then in the back of that free book that you gave them, it's like, hey, you know what? Here's another little short story that I wrote. And then they try to go download that short story and they get a little message that says, oh, I'm sorry. No, you're not on my list. This freebie is only exclusive to people that are on my list. And yeah, so don't get my stuff and then just immediately unsubscribe. It's worth it to stick around. I do a free short story every month, or I do free chapters, however you want to do it, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I recommend that authors do, since you can create as many pages as you want, and each page is tracked separately, and like you're saying, if your account is integrated with your mailing list, so you're using MailerLite, you're using MailChimp, then you can integrate your BookFunnel account directly with those mailers, and you can set up a page that collects email addresses, and when someone signs up, it tags them on their mailing list with a particular tag. So you can say at the end of book one, you give away a free short story, and or a free novella, and it's the prequel to book one. So use one page for that. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of book two, you could offer the same thing, but use a different page. Same thing in the end of book three, or you could offer a different short story at the end of each one. What that gives you is, that if somebody clicked the link in the back of book one, well, they probably made it to the end of book one. They probably read it. And if they read it and then clicked it and wanted to get the novella, they probably liked it, right? So you can start making some assumptions about the data. Now, they're just assumptions, but what's even better is, like, I know that you got to the end of book three before you went back to get the novella, because I used a different link. I used a different page at the end of book three than I did in book one. So I know this reader now has a tag on them that says, yeah, they read through the whole trilogy, and then they wanted the freebie. So, some readers are reluctant to go and give their email address, and they don't want to do all of that. But I know that by the time you got to the end of book three, well, then you really wanted the novella, and you wanted to go back and see how how the story started. Now I know that you're a reader who's read through the entire trilogy. And we do that all the time. If you see authors who do give away like a short story once a month, they use a different link that tags those readers so that they can start to figure out who their like loyal readers are, who really clicks through, and man, they've got every short story I've ever put out. That guy, he's probably going to buy this next book.
Mm. Well, and that's we'll talk about direct sales in a minute, and I think that preface that with, anytime I've had the conversations around direct sales, there seems to be this assumption by authors it's like an all or nothing thing.
Right.
Right.
No,
like,
we see that.
Right. Like it's either I'm in KU or I'm wide. And it's also like this weird assumption, like, well, if you're going to sell direct, you're not even going to like go to any of these platforms.
Yeah.
And what I'm excited about with these kind of tools and being able to do this is it's about figuring out how to sell to as many people as possible the way they want to be sold to, right? Like, and that means you have to start capturing that information and understanding the segments of your customer base. And that's like what you just talked about, being able to tag somebody and know where they are in the journey, right? It's so important, because if they're an avid reader and they've burned through the series, you don't want to be, you may even want to think about what kind of emails you're sending them, that they don't want to be getting stuff that you're sending to the new readers, right?
Yeah.
To start having to, because they're your diehard fans that have been around a while, and they're going to be the ones that are going to most likely buy direct from you.
We have a lot of authors that are in KU and use their BookFunnel accounts really creatively. So if you think about it, and it's you're going to have to spend a little to get a little. So in the case of an author, though, the spend is a 2,000 or 3,000 word short story, which most authors, even if you're really slow, you could write in a day or two. Take a break in the middle of that novel that you're working on, that you're grinding out through that saggy middle, and write a quick short story and put that. Yeah, so let's say you've got, I've got 10 books in a series. They're all in KU. But keep those short stories, keep those little exclusive nuggets just for your mailing list. Because the problem with KU is that those readers are not loyal to you. If you disappeared from KU and I'm a fantasy reader, I'll just go read some other guy's fantasy. I may someday wonder where you went. Oh, what was that guy's name? But for the most part, I'm in KU, and readers in KU, because we see it all the time. They email us all the time. As far as they're concerned, they read it for, quote, for free in KU. The same way that we all feel about Netflix, right? We pay Netflix $9, $10 a month, but I can read it. I can watch it for free on Netflix. Well, not really, but that's as good as how people feel about it. You're basically giving your books away for free in KU. Thankfully, you get paid for it. So those readers, especially the ones who are like diehard KU, they want everything for free. So if you're willing to throw out a short story occasionally for free, they're going to love it, because they already are hooked on that free, right? They don't pay for books anymore. They pay their $10, and everything either needs to be in KU or it needs to be free somewhere else. Save those little nuggets for your mailing list. Get those KU readers onto your list so that you can use those exclusives so that you can get that data from them. And then, you can start selling direct by selling, just a nice novella that's only 99 cents. Because when you're selling direct, you get a much larger cut of the profit than if you were to put a 99-cent book on Amazon. Amazon's only going to give you 35 cents on that $1 novella. Yeah. The people that are in KU that are now married to your series, and they love you, and they stick around, and they're on your mailing list, and they like all the stuff that you do, they are the completists. They want to know. They want that novella that you wrote that happens at the end of the first trilogy, but before the second trilogy starts. Yeah, they want to know it, and they're willing to give up $1 to do it. But you get to take home a lot of that profit, and better, you get the data. You know who is there that buys books.
Well, you hit on some good points there. First thing being is, the value proposition of KU is not your content. It's a subscription service that Amazon offers. Right. And they could just as easily, if it's either going to be your content that they pay you for, or they'll get somebody else to share crop content into there.
Sure.
But what is there is it's a segment where you can glean or tease out some fans, right? Not everybody in that thing is the exact same, and there's going to be some people that are a KU reader and they read your stuff and they're like, wow, this resonates with me. I like this guy's stuff. And like you said, they're going to read through everything, and they may be prepared to pay money with you because they're your fan now, right? You're not going to get them all, right? You can't assume that, I think that's where some people get hung up when the whole idea of direct sales and KU is the objective isn't to get, if you're making $20,000 a month in KU reads, it's not to replace that $20,000 a month. It's to find the 5 or 3% of people there that you can move over to be your fans. Right. Because if something does happen to KU, those fans that you do have direct, they'll be there for you wherever you go or however you do. Right?
Sure.
And the other point is that one of the things that I have done with BookFunnel and PayPal is sell books direct within my email via a link, 99-cent pre-order special, and you make 65% margin.
Yeah, we have a number of authors that pre-sell their new book 2 weeks before it goes into KU. So they know that they're going to go exclusive. They also know that they have readers on their mailing list that are not Amazon readers. If you were building your list long before KU existed, you've got people on your list, and even now you've probably got readers on your list. They're not in KU. There are Amazon boycotters out there that and they're angry with you because you put your books in KU, but you got to do what you've got to do for your business, right? It's a business decision that you make. But at the same time, you can say, hey, listen, the book's going to release on September 1st. It will go into KU, so it will be exclusive for the first 90 days. If you want it now and you're not an Amazon subscriber, or even if you're not in KU, you can buy it from me right now for $2.99. It'll be $4.99 the day it's released, but you can buy it from me for the next 2 weeks before it goes into KU. And as long as the book is not in KU, you can sell it and do anything you want with it. Now, the minute it goes into KU, you can't sell it from your website anymore. You're under an exclusive agreement with Amazon. But for those first 2 weeks, you can not only make a fair bit of cash from selling to the people who don't want to wait, right? I even subscribers that are in KU are like, well, I really want this book. I'm willing to pay $3. I'll pay $3 to read it 2 weeks before everyone else does. And then those readers who are not Amazon readers have an opportunity to buy it at a discounted price before it becomes exclusive. You can do anything you want. They're your books, and you can do, until you put them in KU, you can sell them any way you want.
Yeah, and I go another layer on that. I suggest that you look at doing your pre-orders that way too. And it's essentially you're giving, I think it's really important because I'm looking at this really as a business. It's like cash flow is king. And so if you do this, what ends up happening is you put yourself in a position where you kind of write yourself in advance. Your fans write you in advance on the book. So like you're not scraping up a bunch of money to go through a book launch. You could get, like when I did this one book, I got 50% of my book launch costs back.
Right.
I've never done this before, mind you.
Right.
Okay. And it was just what you said. There was people that bought it because, I'd seen them on the list. And I know that I could tell they weren't buying stuff. And the minute I put it, they bought.
Yeah.
And I've also seen, because some of the stuff I do, I can track. It still kind of boggles my mind where people will come in through a free download, and within a matter of days, they'll be buying a book.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Readers love books, and they buy books. I was surprised when we released our direct sales platform. I had built it because authors kept asking for it. They kept, from the day that the first day we opened BookFunnel, we got our first email saying, "This is great. How can I deliver my sales?" And I resisted building it for years because I thought, well, nobody wants to buy from anybody's website. That's just not going to happen, right? Everybody's too hooked on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and whatever their favorite retailer is. Nobody wants to do that. So I finally built it because people just wouldn't shut up about it. And I really, it's true. I've told the story before, but it's like I built it so that you would stop asking me for it. And I put it out there confident that no one was going to sell more than a couple of books. And I was wrong. We have authors that sell thousands of books a month through their BookFunnel account because we don't do the sales part. So we don't handle the money. We don't handle the credit cards, any of that stuff. It's all done through integrated platforms, which also means we don't take a cut of those sales. We don't take a cut of any of it. It's just all included with your BookFunnel account. We handle all the delivery and all the support that if anybody has any trouble getting their books, we handle all of that side of it. And now that it's out there, I'm pleasantly surprised by how much people use it. And better than that, the response that I have seen from readers is great, which is we get dozens of emails a week from a reader who just says, "Oh, well, I'm having a little trouble getting this book," and we help them get it. And then they're done and they say, "Oh, thank you so much. I can't wait to read it. I just love such and such's books, and I love being able to buy directly from her so that I can support her." Readers who love their favorite authors, they don't care where they get their books from. And 9 times out of 10, if you give them a call to action like, "Hey, listen, here's my book in all the bookstores, or you could buy it directly from me, and I get a little bit, I get a little extra scratch if you buy it from me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of readers, your loyal fans, they'll happily click through and buy it direct from you because it means that they're supporting you and they love you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now that I've done it, I've just on that particular book, I just have the link there, and I'm always surprised. I send out an email, and then a couple hours later, there starts to pop through some sales, and it's like, once it's done, it's done, right? And I think the other thing with what people forget with what you're doing with this whole service piece is, like, authors know better than anybody else what it's like to call Amazon and ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's what their customers are experience when they have issues with the Kindle or anything on Amazon, right? Opposed to if they buy direct, like, what you're part of this whole deal is you're giving like some like good homegrown customer service.
Our customer service is all, we love to say it's text support. All of our customer support people are from Texas. I'm from Texas. I didn't mention, don't usually, but we all live in Texas. All of our support staff is trained on every device that you can think of. First generation Kindle Fire that you've never seen. Yep. We've got those. We've tested all of those. The Nook tablet that, hardly anyone even has, but old Gertie's got one. She still uses it, 8 years later. Yeah, we've got that one too. And we help all of them. And our support people are trained specifically. I mean, they didn't require much training. Again, we're all just, Southern hospitality is not just a phrase. Like, we teach everybody unfailingly nice, unfailingly kind, always happy, always cheerful. And you're always dealing with a real people. We don't have robots that answer. We don't have autoresponders. Our people answer help requests by real people. And you'd be surprised how many people will reply with something along like, "Oh my God, I can't believe there's actually a real person."
Yeah.
I don't remember the last time I asked for help and got a response from an actual person. And that's how we do all of it. And it probably doesn't scale to a business like Amazon, but I don't care. That's the kind of business that I want to run.
Yeah. Kind of an aside, I had an issue with the website, and I went to the web host and wrote them, getting help on a chat thing, and it was taking so long, and it was clearly overseas thing. And I finally said, "Is this a bot?" And I don't know. The guy responded, "A bot wouldn't be this slow."
Well, he's honest.
Yeah. So, he's probably trying to help two customers at once, right? Like,
right, sure.
Right? Like, but it's like, okay, it isn't a bot.
Well, I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah.
However, you're right. This is really slow.
Yeah. Cool. So, direct sales.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about two things with that. Just generally, what you think are some good practices and some things that people can do. And I know one thing that some folks may be interested in hearing about is what you're doing with Patreon too.
Okay. So the biggest mistake that you can make, I think, is to turn around and try to sell readers the same thing direct that you're selling everybody else for the same price. Now, most retailers have in their terms of service that you didn't bother to read, and no one ever does, they have what's called a most favored nation clause, which basically says if you sell this book cheaper anywhere else, you have to give us the same price. So Amazon has that. iBooks has that. If you put your book up for $4.99 on Amazon and then you list it for 99 cents on iBooks, Amazon has little spiders that crawl all over the web looking for your book, and they will alter your price and drop you to 99 cents. That's the most favored nation clause. So technically, you're not allowed to do that. Now, that said, Amazon is not crawling DamonJCourtney.com or my email list to see that I'm selling the book at a discount. But we still don't recommend you do that. What we do recommend you do is, if you want to discount it, then discount it. If you want to offer a different product, something that you don't sell anywhere else. So if you've got a 5-book series, hey, I don't box this series up, but I do sell the first 3 books of the 5 direct from my website for a nice little discount. They're $5 a piece. I'll sell you the first 3 for $10, which you make way more profit than if you sold all 3 of them for $5 a piece on a retailer. And more importantly, again, you have the data. I know this person bought that trilogy and they were willing to pay $10, $10 cash they were willing to put down to buy that book. Another one that I see some authors doing and that we actually recommend, because one of the questions we get a lot is, I've built my mailing list. I've gave away a free book, and I've got a few thousand people on my list. And then I released my new book and 5 people bought it. And what do I do with those? What do I do? How do I know? What do I do with all those people who got on my list just to get a free book? How do I know which ones are actually going to buy something? Well, you can do that with direct sales. Again, it's all about having the data. So if you've got a few books in a series, or you've got a really sweet deal, package it up. Take the first 3 books of a long-running series and send them to your list and say, hey, listen, guys, this weekend only, I'm selling the first 3 books of my 5-book series for 99 cents. $1, 3 stories. You can't get it this cheap anywhere else. You send it out to your entire mailing list. You send it out on Thursday, and you say, this weekend only. You send it again on Saturday, maybe on Sunday, and see who buys it. Mm-hmm. If people aren't willing to pay $1 for 3 full novels, they're probably either not getting your emails because they're going to spam, or they're never going to buy anything from you. So you can do one of 2 things. Move those people off to a list that basically says, these guys are probably freeloaders, but more importantly, these people buy. And maybe they won't buy that brand new novel that just came out at $6.99, but I know that if I give it a little bit of time and then I send this list a discounted copy for $1.99, these people have bought from me before and probably will do so again. Mm. And that's, because once you start building a mailing list, the more people you get on it, the more you pay for it. MailChimp, MailerLite, they all work on a scale. So the more subscribers that you have, the more you're going to end up paying for it. And that, once you get up to 8,000, 10,000 people, which is actually not a lot when you're trying to sell people on a mailing list, but now you're paying $120, $130 a month to keep that mailing list up. And some of those people for sure are not going to buy. They're not buyers. They just want to be there for free books. Now, if they're still opening and they're still clicking and you're giving away free short stories, they're still engaged. They can still be valuable. Just because they don't buy books, especially if your books are in KU, well, you can't know if they're buying. You can't know if they're reading, other than literally sending an email that said, hey, did you read the new book? Mm-hmm. And then maybe moving them over to a list that says, yeah, they read the 3rd book. But you're not going to be able to know that. But we see authors doing a lot with their sales and using that to collect that data. Because again, if you're doing the sales directly, BookFunnel, whatever platform you end up selling through, you're going to get their information. But BookFunnel also tracks and gives you you can export an Excel spreadsheet of everybody who bought this book. You can go into a book and you can say, oh yeah, we've had 54 sales. And you say, export that, give me that data. And you could go import that back into your mailing list and say, these people, they bought books. They bought them directly from me. So they're probably good buyers. Yeah.
Well, that's really a critical piece in this whole thing is segmentation, right? Is understanding that, once you, with that idea, well, they buy, well, now you treat them differently, right? You can offer them different things. That there's a higher propensity for them to buy. And to your other point, as far as what I found when a lot of people that I thought were deadbeats, once I offered them the ability to buy direct, they were the first ones to buy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so guys that in another world, I probably would have kicked off the list. I put that link in there. It was, quite easy to do, sold the book, and I was really surprised at the number of people that bought and the names that were on that list. It was like, wow, I did not think that guy.
Yeah, I would have thought you were a total loser.
Yeah. It's like, but boom, there they are. So now they're in my world, they're going to be treated completely different, right?
Right.
Because now the exercise is, what are they prepared to buy from me direct? Right?
Yes.
Because now I've got a direct website. I can scale that up. There could be cruises. Who knows, right? Like that becomes a whole nother exercise of what you can sell. But, one last thing on figuring out those people that are hard, like KU readers, the other thing to do with that mailing list is survey. Mm-hmm. I think it's because people are readers and they're on these devices, or some of it's just I don't want to get into what people's different readers are, but they seem to, I've found pretty good about filling out surveys and telling you how many books they read, what they read, authors they like?
A lot of them are very vocal.
Yeah.
People want to feel like what we have seen in our support and we see all the time is people want to feel like they're a part of the process. A lot of authors use BookFunnel to deliver their early review copies or early reader copies. And so, I'm always surprised by how many copies go out through BookFunnel every day through our review copy system. And those are readers who've said, yes, I want to be a part of making this book a success. And they become invested in your success. They love you. And I mean, look, I have authors that I have read for more than 20 years. And if they reached out and said, hey, listen, I've got a new book out. It's kind of a new thing for me, but I would love if everybody would take a look at it and maybe, tweet it out to your friends or whatever. I would do that. I love these people. I've read them for 20 years. Of course I'll do that. And most indies have been around 20 years, but you're just getting started. It doesn't matter. I have seen readers who are rabid fans after one book. Like the first book in the series was so good that they are just diehard fans, and whatever I can do to help you in your career, I will do that. And turning around and saying, hey, listen, everybody here, I know that you've read my series. I know you're on my list because hopefully you've read and you love my books. Listen, I'm putting together the first 3 in the trilogy in a little box set that you guys probably already have, but if you don't have it, here's a chance to pick it up on a discount if you've never read it before. And also, if you could just forward this on to one of your friends who might like reading the same kind of books that you do and just say, hey, here's a series that I love, and you can pick up the first 3 books for $2. You can get sales, you can get more data out of that, and you'll find that there are so many readers out there who are willing to help you.
Sure.
And yeah, filling out surveys, sure, I'll be happy to tell you what characters I love and what I love to read. They want to be heard, and they want to feel like they are a part of your success.
Yeah. One thing to circle back on when we were talking about that most favored nation and some of the things you can and can't do with selling books direct. When you step up to a more sophisticated platform like something like WooCommerce or Shopify, which your product connects up to.
Yes.
What I'm set up with is I use WooCommerce and WordPress with BookFunnel. I can provide coupons, discounts, and I can track all that.
Well, you can also turn around and sell book 1 with the prequel novella attached, and that's a different product. That is not the same product as the one that you're selling on Amazon. So there are plenty of ways around it. And in that way, you can either offer a discount or you can say, hey, listen, you feel free to buy the book over here on Amazon. I've got it for $2.99. But right here, I've got it for $2.99, and I include 2 free short stories at the end of it that I don't include anywhere else. They're exclusive only if you buy this copy from me. Do you get these 2 short stories? I don't sell them anywhere. And that's what we tell people. Take some of those little short stories, some of those cool ideas that you have. Because, I mean, as a writer, once I got started building my fantasy world, I had so many ideas that didn't fit into the core series, but I had so many cool ideas that I wanted to write that I just started writing up these little short stories. And keep those to yourself. Keep those little nuggets exclusive. And going back to what we were going to talk about, which was Patreon. And BookFunnel integrates with Patreon. And what the way that integration works is basically you connect your BookFunnel with your Patreon account, and then you can set up pages on BookFunnel that give away books that are restricted to Patreon reward levels. So you can say, hey, listen, if you follow me on Patreon at the $5 reward level, I send out 3 short stories every month to all my patrons. And when you set up your page on BookFunnel to distribute that book, you can say, here's the short story, here's the page. The only people that can get this book are people who are following me on Patreon at least the $5 level. Then you send that link out to all of your patrons, and if they turn around and share that link with somebody else, well, they can't get the book. They're not a patron, they're not at the right level. Even if somebody's like, well, I support them for $1. The free short stories are not at the $1 level, they're the $5 level. And so by integrating BookFunnel with your Patreon account, we can make sure that the people that are your patrons, the ones who are supporting you, are the ones who are getting the books. And we have a number of authors that do that they use their Patreon as a way to put out early releases. Hey, if you follow me for $5 a month, I put out all my books early by 3 weeks to my Patreon subscribers, to my patrons. So everything I write, you get it 3 weeks before everybody else, just for supporting me over here, which of course means you get the lion's share of the money.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, even when you have somebody who is a KU subscriber, but they love your books that much, nobody wants to be left behind. People were standing in line at midnight to buy The Goblet of Fire when it came out, and went home, bought it at midnight, and read it until they fell over at 7 o'clock in the morning so that they could be the first one to say, oh my God, you guys, you just can't believe what she did in this story. I'm not going to tell anybody, but I totally read it before you did.
Yeah.
So there are those readers out there, and they don't care that they're in KU. If they love you that much, yeah, they'll support you on Patreon for a couple of bucks a month. They want that stuff early. They want those short stories that you're holding that are exclusive, and they want that book 3 weeks before everyone else gets it.
Well, and that's, the heart of this whole thing for me is that as an author, you have control over the intellectual property, right? Like,
you're an indie.
That's one of your assets. That is real. Even if you're in KU, it's still your asset, right? You've decided that's one way you're going to monetize it. But here's this other asset, being a customer list, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is something that's really profound. It's like a mailing list isn't a customer list. Say it again. A mailing list isn't a customer list, right? Like,
right.
Once you start turning that into a customer list, both of those assets are worth more money,
mm-hmm.
right? Because you can say, hey, this content gets sold to these people, right? So if you were going to say, I have a vision, I want to make a movie someday, right? If you wrote a mediocre script, but you said, I have a list of 25,000 people that buy all my stuff and they've spent this much money and I can show you all the data, versus a script that's like probably better, but I don't know who you are. Nobody else does. What script is going to get made, right?
Right.
The one that's bankable. You can extrapolate from those numbers what the value of that movie could be in the future. Right?
Movies have been, in the last few years, movies have been made simply on the backs of people's social media platforms. People got shows, DIYers got shows on their own television show on HGTV because they had a huge following online, on their blog, on Twitter, on Instagram. People now, my wife follows DIY blogs, and there are some of those people that have whole lines of their products in Walmarts and Kmarts across the world because they built up a following online on social media.
But this is like a step above that, in that who these people are.
Sure.
And oh, by the way, the content, it isn't just stuff that you suggest. It's content that only you have.
Exactly. You are an author. You are an indie author. Only you can write your books. There are plenty of people out there that are also writing books, but there are authors that I read, that I have read most of my life, that there are no substitutes for. If they have a new book out, I'm going to buy that book. And even doesn't mean it's not mutually exclusive. It doesn't mean I don't buy other authors. I get new authors all the time. But there are some who I'm on their list, and I will buy all their books as they come out. Now, unfortunately, they're traditionally published, so they only come out about once a year, which is really painful.
Yeah.
So as an indie, if you can write faster, I would recommend you do so, because as a reader, I will buy them as fast as you can put them out.
Right. Well, and I think most people that watch this are in the business end of that.
Yes.
On that treadmill thing, though.
Well, we're all readers first, right? I haven't met a single author that wasn't a rabid reader before they decided they were going to write their own book. I've read fantasy and science fiction my whole life, and that's what I still read today. So if somebody comes along and I'm at a conference and I meet an author who's a sci-fi fantasy author, I'll usually pick up my phone and go buy their first book. I'm like, oh, is it good? I'll read it. Those are good reviews. Yeah, I'll pick it up.
Yeah.
Because I'm always looking for a new great author. I'm rarely looking for the next book that I'm going to read. I'm looking for the next author I'm going to love.
That's a good point. So before we wrap up, what else do you think people should know about BookFunnel, things you think are interesting in the industry? This is your time to pontificate, Reverend.
Well, so it's really funny that you're kind of building on this direct sales stuff, because again, I would have told you a year ago that nobody cares. Nobody wants to buy direct from your website, and the evidence has proven me wrong. And maybe it's not, we haven't moved 1 million books on BookFunnel through our direct sales platform, but it's a lot of books. And it's way more than I ever thought we would. So I was wrong. Don't do like I did and just assume that readers don't want to buy direct from you. We hear from readers all the time how much they love their authors and how much they're willing to support them. And if that means buying the book direct, and especially if they get a bonus, you're getting it 2 weeks before everybody else, then they get something and they're supporting you and they love that. So, without bashing any particular retailer or anything like that, if you don't own the data, and those retailers, they do own the data. And if you've ever gone and looked at your dashboards, looking at your reports, they're not sharing any of that data with you. So if you don't own that data, then you don't know where your readers are. And one day, if those platforms decide to take that away from you, as some retailers have without notice and without warning, deleted and shut down authors' entire accounts, pulling all of their books, and you're gone with no recourse and no way to get your account reinstated, and you're just gone. Your entire livelihood just disappeared in a puff of smoke. And if you own your mailing list, no one can do that to you. They can't take that mailing list away from you. They can't take your books away from you. You're an indie, so you can sell your books anywhere you want to. And that's a business decision, and you should absolutely sell them where you're going to make the most money. I'm not going to argue with anybody about that. But while you're also selling all your books wherever you're selling them, you should be working on building that fan base and knowing who those fans are and having a way to communicate them. Even with Facebook, every year Facebook changes the algorithms a little bit so that group, that fan page that you had 5 years ago, when you would post to your fan page and all 10,000 of your fans would get your notice, now like 1,000 get that notice, unless you want to boost it. And suddenly you realize that Facebook owns your audience. You don't. Which is why, as much as, people shy away or they get nervous when they hear the word mailing list, because it sounds like something, it's a very DIY sort of thing. You have to go build it. Nobody's going to do it for you. But at the same time, there is no greater power than being able to communicate with your fans directly without having to go through someone else's platform to do it.
Well, and to that point, if you look at all those platforms, when you're looking to build an audience, so like if you were to go build a custom audience on Facebook, one of the things that they look at is that email address, right? It's almost like a digital DNA, right? Like they're associating in their database a whole bunch of information about you with that email address. Mm-hmm. So having that yourself is super, super important.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I saw a post the other day, and it happens pretty regularly. People talk about that, their reviewers can't review on Amazon, or a bunch of their reviews got pulled. And what Amazon is doing is they're trolling your Facebook, they're trolling your Twitter, and anybody who is following you on Twitter or following you on Facebook, Amazon considers them biased. So they are not allowed to review your books. Their reviews get removed because if they're following you on Facebook, somehow they must be biased about your books, which they're your fans. Of course they're biased. They love your books. But shouldn't that be the people who review? Because the people who aren't biased that are giving me 1-star reviews, well, they're certainly not getting kicked off. They're not the ones following me on Facebook. And so it's hard because I'm working on a series right now, a sci-fi series with a co-author. And I've considered the possibility of having no Facebook and no Twitter presence for this author pen name that we're writing under, and instead just driving everything to my website, because if there's a Twitter and if there's a Facebook and if there's data out there that Amazon can get a hold of, they're going to hold it against me. Instead of, well, they can't know who's on my mailing list. They can't know who's on my website. There's no way that they can track any of that data. And so they can't use that against me and strip my reviews from, quote, people that are biased.
Interesting. All right, man. Is there anything else? Any cool new stuff you're going to do?
I don't like to talk about new stuff. We actually have some cool new stuff coming out, but we'll update that in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Going to put lasers on everything?
Yep. Lasers on sharks everywhere.
All right, man. That's great. It's good talking to you again, and I really appreciate taking the time coming on. It's been great. We'll have to do this again.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Joe. Appreciate it.
All right.